Hey everyone, Jakinto here. Today I'll be going over an 18 Mists of Tirna Scithe run that I did complete in time. Let's get into it here. I'll mainly be going over the route and why I took the route, but also explain my gameplay and some choices that I made as well. So we are running with a Holy Paladin, 2 Hunters, and a Fire Mage here. And we are going to start off with doing the skip to the left. Now the first pull is going to be a big pull. We're going to pull the Spite Claws along with the Villager pack. And the affixes here are Fortified, Inspired, Storming, and of course Prideful here. So I jump in and right away I use my Arcane Torrent just to get the debuff off the Spite Claws there. I will get threat on everything, and we do trap the Harvester because it is inspired. We do want to make sure we're able to control the other mobs, otherwise it can be a little bit hairy there. You can do it if you focus down the Harvester quick enough, but it's just a bit safer to trap it off to the side there. And as you can see, I'm kiting these mobs along the wall. I'm mainly doing that so the frontal cone of the Villager doesn't get in the way of people and they don't have to move for it. So I'm making sure to stay along the wall and keeping those packs away from the group. And we are getting, as you can see, we got a binding shot out there, as many CCs as we can just to make sure they are controlled. And when the Villager's about to die, we just grip in the Harvester and we start to kill that down there. So pretty big pull. We did lust the pull as well just to make it a bit easier, but this pull saves a lot of time as you're doing 3 packs at once. You're doing the 2 Spike Claw packs as well as the Villager pack. And this is pretty standard for the higher key level of doing mists in this way. Definitely recommend doing this, and without the inspiring, you can just definitely go in there and pull everything. But again, I do like to cut it towards the wall just to get it a bit cleaner and so people know where I'm going. This pack, we're going to invis past here, as we do want to skip this so the Prideful matches up with the boss. As you can see with this pack here, there is an inspired soul cleaver, so we definitely want to get that trapped there. Now these Harvesters can be very scary on Fortified. The Spirit Bolts can do a ton of damage and they can target random players. So we definitely want to make sure we're getting interrupts. As you can see, one of our Hunters just got pretty much globaled by 2 Spirit Bolts. So we want to make sure we get as many interrupts, stuns, and anything else that we can get off, especially to desync the Spirit Bolts. So here, if you're tanking this, do be aware that the Soul Cleaver does hit you pretty hard. They were nerfed recently, but they still hit you very hard. So we're just doing everything we can, stay away from the Storming, and interrupt as many casts of the Harvesters that we can, as well as doing a bit of kiting for that Soul Cleaver there. And after the Harvesters are dead and the Soul Cleaver is dead, we will get that last Soul Cleaver, and we're going to go into the Mushroom Room to get our debuff. And do note that they did fix going into the Mushroom Room before the key has started, so you can't do that anymore. You can only do it when the key has actually already begun. And we're just about to pick up that last Soul Cleaver here. And again, doing this route, you do get Pride right before the boss, after the 2 big packs before the boss there. And as you can see, these Soul Cleavers really hit really hard, especially if you have 2 on you at once. So if it's not inspired and you're tanking both Soul Cleavers, you definitely want to make sure you get bindings down, you get slows, and you are kiting a little bit, especially if you have the debuff on you and the Soul Cleavers are buffed. So just getting our Mushroom here, we do want to get the main stat Mushroom, increase our strength, and give us some more armor to our bone shields there, which is always nice. Now we're going on to the big pack. This big pack, we do want to make sure we're focusing 1 down. We don't want to get both of them down to 50% at the same time, as when they get to 50%, that's when they do their thrash. So I'm marking 1 with Skull to focus it down. And we are going to kill that before the other one, ideally before the other one does the thrash there, just to minimize the damage output going out. As you can see, I'm trying to, after every pack, I am trying to go into the next pack with as many stacks of Bone Shield as I can, and as much runic power as I can have as well, as that'll really set you up well for that pack. In most packs, I will be popping a rune tap before going in too, as that really decreases the amount of spike damage that you're going to take. And right here, we're just focused on kiting them out of the Bramble Burst there, getting out of Storming if we can, and the healer definitely focusing on healing up the thrash damage there. And we do get Pride right after this is done. And we do want to AMZ pretty much every Pride, as using AMZ definitely helps the healer a lot. Just make sure to really specify to your players that you should be stacked pretty close to the manifestation so they can just be an AMZ when it's popped. As you will want to pop it around there. You can pop it at range if there's a lot of range players stacked up, but it's safe just to pop it around the manifestation so you get the buff as well. And after this is down, we're going to engage the boss right away here. So since it's not tyrannical, it will be a bit easier, as you won't have to worry about doing too many phases of the boss here, but we do want to nuke him down as quick as we can. And for the pride, a good tip too is if you do get the beams on you, just stay still, don't move, and let the other people move around you. It definitely helps out quite a bit if you do that. The pride's just about to go down. As you can see, we did do the AMZ there. And we are saving our personal defensives if we can. We can pop rune taps if we need to on the pride, but generally, I don't really feel like I need that much help on the pride, so I will save it for either the boss or the next trash pack, whatever's coming up next here. Now for this boss, focusing on getting interrupts on Ingra whenever we can. If you're in a party with people, you definitely want to call that out. If not, just get as many as you can, as they can do a lot of damage to people, and they focus random players as well, just like the Harvester Spirit Bolts. And we're focusing the tree down, Droman down first, and then the boss is going to take a lot more damage once Droman gets to 20% and starts trailing on the boss there. Here we go, and hopefully if you do save Lust for this boss and you're not lusting the first pack, you do want to lust a bit before you get to this phase. So before you get to the burn phase, which is happening now, as you can see, you want to lust usually around like when Droman's 40 to 50%, just so you have Lust rolling already. It definitely helps up quite a bit. It also helps you get Droman down faster, so you're not wasting that pride buff. You want that pride buff to be up during that first burn phase. If you don't, you're wasting a lot of damage that could have happened on Ingra there. Right now, we'll probably have to do one more phase, and we should be good after that one more burn phase. But for this boss, I'm really just focusing on always keeping my bone shield stacks up and kiting them out of the blue circles, getting the interrupts down, and preferably pointing the cone away from my ranged, just so they don't have to move and they can keep pumping on the boss as much as possible. It is nice having 3 ranged. We only have 1 melee, which would be the Holy Paladin, as they are on melee, as well as myself, so no melee DPS. And here we go. We're just about to hit the last burn phase here. We should be able to get him down almost the full way and move on to the next pull here. Perfect. And just talking about the next pull, we are able to do a big pull. So you're actually able to pull the right side room along with the 2 packs that are going to be right in front of you. And if you just watch where I go, it's kind of to the right corner after this boss. After you go to the right corner, you're able to actually pull the mob through the wall. And by doing that, it'll save you time, as you'll either get more kill count if you're not going to go that way through the mists, or you can just pull that, and even if you are going that way, you're still going to be saving time because you're doing 2 packs at once there. I'm just going to go into the right side cubby, and there is a prideful, or there's an inspired rather here, but we will, if you can trap it in some way, then that's great. But I wasn't too worried about that too much. You can just pull it and you should be okay. There's no tenders here to heal you up, to heal the mobs up rather, so it's not too detrimental. So right now with these, I'm just focusing on staying in place as much as possible. I want them to stay in my AoE from the hunters and from the mage, the flame patches, the wild spirits, anything they have down. So I do want to keep them as stationary as possible, but once I run out of defensives, as you can see, I have pretty much nothing left. I do want to start kiting a bit just to alleviate the pressure from the healer there. And from myself, once I have low runic power, no defensives up, that's really when you want to start kiting for sure. And as you can see, that the pack wasn't too bad. We got it down fairly easily there, and that saved quite a bit of time. And now you have the maze here. There is weak auras that can help you through it. If one person has it, they can definitely do it. Usually it would be the healer or maybe a ranged DPS doing it, and that can help quite a bit. Make sure the weak aura is working though. Sometimes it doesn't work. So in this case, we went to the side that the mob was actually there where we pulled. So it didn't really save us, well, it didn't really get us extra percent, as we would have had to kill it anyway, but it did save us time as we did it with a different pack here. This pack here, you definitely want to make sure if you can get stuns on the Stalker before it does the bite. That's very important, as the bite does a ton of damage, especially on Fort. And we're moving out of the Spear Flurries and trying to keep the Spear Flurries pointed towards the wall as much as possible, just so they don't hit the range. Pointing it towards the middle of the room would probably be the worst position, as that's where most people are going to be. And since it is a cone, that cone does get wider the further you are, so the range would have to move pretty far if they want to get out of that there. But in general, these mobs aren't too deadly to the tank. They don't do a whole lot of tank damage. There are some packs that are harder than others, but in general, not too bad. And we're just going to do the maze here and move on. As you can see, we're getting pretty close to prideful here. So keeping that in mind, we're almost at another 20%. So midway through this pack, we are going to get the prideful. Ideally, you'd want to kill these together. But if that can't happen, kite the other ones away and then make sure you get the prideful down as soon as possible. So in this pack, we do have a tender and a shaper. So we want to have 2 people interrupting on that. As you can, I'm mainly focusing on the tender here. So we will be getting the interrupt on the tender, as you can see. And again, trying to keep them as stationary as possible. I was rooted there, so I wasn't able to move out of all the bad stuff. But if we can, just kiting them. And when you're kiting, if you can kite them kind of in a circle around where your DPS's AoE is going to be, that's going to increase your overall DPS by a lot. So definitely try to make sure to do that. If you can't, though, definitely prioritize staying alive. And as you can see, we did have 2 ads up while we had the prideful come up, but they were pretty low health and everything got cleaved down pretty evenly, which is very ideal. Definitely make sure that that happens when prideful is about to come, especially mid-pack there. And just going to get this prideful down. Again, really position yourself around the player, whoever has beam. Don't make them move, as if they move, then other players are likely have to move as well. And popping AMZ here, I do get stunned, which isn't ideal. I should have, been more mindful on that part when he moved. But AMZ is a great place to use, especially if you're around 10 to 13 stacks. It does depend on the healer and when they use your CDs, but 10 to 13 stacks is a good place to use AMZ. And if you have, I'm not using the AMZ conduit here, but if you're running the AMZ conduit, you can definitely pop that a bit earlier as well, and that'll soak up a bit more damage. So it'll last a bit longer. So we get the res on the hunter, and here we do see that there is a defender who's inspired, going to try to trap that and make sure that doesn't get in the group. There is a tender here, so if we have the inspired with the tender would likely get its heal off, and in this pack there's actually 2 tenders, so it would definitely be bad if we kept it in the group. We want to make sure we get that Nourish of the Force interrupt. That's the very most important thing, as if it gets off, it's a ton of healing that they'll do. And again, I'm trying to stay as stationary as possible, keeping them in the Mage's Flame Patch, keeping them in all the AoE on the ground. Even if I have to take a bit of extra damage, if I know I'll be able to take it, I will, as it'll still save you a lot of time, as it's a pretty big damage increase, but keeping them in there. And now just finishing off the tender, or the defender rather, just separately there, as we do want to make sure the tenders are down ahead of time. If you killed both tenders, you could kill both defenders together, as there's not too much you'd have to CC at that point, but it's good to play it safe if you're able to have the time to do so. And do keep in mind that this route does vary from key to key. You're not going to get the exact maze that I'm getting here. You will get different mobs, different packs. You just got to be mindful of what you have, really know what each pack does, and really be mindful of what you can do to help out the pack. If you have tenders, get the interrupts. Shapers, get your interrupts as well. Or if you're Blood Elf and you have Arcane Torrent, make sure to use Arcane Torrent if the Shapers get their cast off. Now we have the big Hydra here. Does quite a bit of tank damage, but this one's not too bad to deal with. Most of these big packs that are just single packs, it'll mainly be tank damage. Just pop a defensive on their big hit, whether it's Triple Bite or the Tongue Lash or whatever have you. And moving out of all the bad stuff on the ground. These aren't too bad here. And after this, we're just going to go on to the next one. We're not getting Pride yet, so always keeping an eye on Pride as well. Especially for AMZ usage, make sure you have AMZ up for Pride. Your healer is going to love you a lot if you do that. Don't pop AMZ right away at the Pride, as the ticking damage doesn't deal a whole lot at first. Again, pop it between 10 and 13 stacks if you can hold it for that. So now we do see that there is an inspiring here. We have a tender, we have a shaper. We are going to trap the tender there. Here we go, perfect. And what we do see, the tender does get broken out. It got broken out by one of my diseases, I believe. So unfortunately, if you're running Super Strain, although it does a lot of damage and gives you a lot of runic power, the Virulent Plague disease from Super Strain, the range of that is very, very high. So you want to make sure that if you're running that and you want something there that you want CC'd, make sure you're pulling them very far back. In this case, it wasn't bad. It was the tender who was inspired. And that's really the only one we want to interrupt. Shapers can be kind of deadly too, but it's really about the tender because of that heal. But if you see something that is CC and you're running Super Strain, make sure to pull them all the way back. and don't use your blood boil, ideally until they get really close to you. Sometimes it might not be possible, especially if you're running melee DPS, as they will be trying to hit them right away, most likely. So again, we have a couple adds up when the manifestation comes, but we did cleave them down together, which is great. And just positioning the manifestation so around the first person who gets the beam, and from there, just not moving too much. If you get the beams, don't move. And we should be hitting the boss room pretty soon. We might have one more pack, or it might be boss room after this, but it will be coming up quite soon here. As you can see, that Pally did use Aura Mastery, and I did communicate with my Paladin healer that they can use Aura Mastery first when they have it, and then I'll use my AMZ after that, shortly after. So right now I did use it a bit at higher stacks because we did have that Aura Mastery around 10 to 12 stacks there. And once the manifestation dies, just going to move on to the next room here. Notch, daily you'd want to know which room you're going in right away. Most of the time healers can do this, or range DPS. Have one person designated to that, but if not, then just make sure everyone runs to a pillar and figures the maze out right away. Again, if you have that weak aura, it definitely helps a lot too. So for this boss, really making sure you get the patty cakes interrupt, as that'll likely cause a wipe. If you don't get that, you'll be disoriented for quite a long time. I think it's 4 to 5 seconds. And for the guessing game, just figure that out right away. I like to throw a skull marker on it usually. Unless you're in Discord and communicating, then obviously you can just call that out right away. But in Pugs, definitely throw that skull marker out just so people know. As you can see, we do have interrupts on the Vulpin. Not interrupts, rather we have CCs. So we are coordinating our hunters to trap the Vulpins. Mages can root as well. There's lots of things that we can do with the Vulpin in this raid composition. But also for the Vulpin, if you don't have those hard CCs like a Frozen Trap, a Hex, or whatnot, you can help out too by pressing Strangulate or using Chains of Ice on the Vulpin. I'll definitely always try to Chains of Ice it whenever I can, just to be safe. And if I see that a CC broke or it's not getting CC'd, I will definitely use Strangulate just to stun it and give our DPS a bit more time to CC it if we need it. Now from here too, this boss positioning, I should have just kept the boss a little bit in the middle of the room, as it does bug out a little bit. The arrows, you can't really see them if it goes kind of under the little hill dip there. So be wary of that, as if you're not communicating in a pug, it can be very deadly if they can't see the arrows for sure. From here, really dodging the dodgeballs, making sure we're getting interrupts on Patty Cake and helping on the Vulpin. We did use that Strangulate there. We had it up, might as well use it. And now we did pop that Chains of Ice on the Vulpin too, just to slow it. It did get broken from its CC. I think it was probably the Ignite from the Fire Mage, but we got stuns on it, we got slows, it's all good. Going up to the next guessing game here, finding the appropriate illusion as fast as possible, dodging dodgeballs and going up to it. Always keep an eye on the patty cakes there, you always want to get that interrupt. And we are helping out on the damage on the clones there. As you can see, we're pulling the Mistcaller towards the middle for a dodgeball, just to prevent what happened last time. Always learning from your mistakes there. It really shows you how positioning can be a huge part of your play as a tank. If we're positioned again below that hill, people might not have seen the dodgeballs and it could have caused a wipe there. And just a bit of intermission before we go down. We're at 63.46% enemy forces, so we're not going to get a pride right away. This can definitely differ depending on what side of the maze that you go on. Could be less, it could be more, as there's about, I think it's around 5 to 7% variance, maybe a bit more than that even depending on your route. So from here, we're going to go into the first pack, just doing this like normal. We're calling out interrupts on the Staghorn. You definitely want to interrupt both casts as soon as possible, as the first one is going to be a big shield, the second one is going to be a heal. Saving your Arcane Torrents for the shield can be very good as well, just in case that no one gets the interrupt, the cast gets off for whatever reason. The people here are cleaving off the Staghorn. I just turned around, I do want to do a big pull ideally after this. We do have the Inspired mob, so they do need to be CC'd, and this is really the best way to deal with Inspired. Just make sure they're hard CC'd at all times, unless you have the damage to really focus it down. Whenever you're going into a pack with an Inspired mob, you want to make sure that your DPS is cleaving off of that Inspired mob. You want that mob to go down the first. After that mob goes down, then you want to get your binding shots, your slows, just a bit of kiting tools because you'll probably be running low on defensives. So here I'm communicating with my hunters. Each one is going to be able to trap one of the inspired mobs from either side. Then we're going to pull both sides. And this big pull does save quite a bit of time. If inspiring wasn't a thing, if it wasn't a week for inspiring, you could just pull both packs and really make sure your DPS go towards where you came from. If they're not going there, they can definitely get trapped on another side of the bridge. And here you really want to pop a lot of cooldowns as you have. As you can see, I was overlapping a fair bit of cooldowns, Vampiric Blood, IBF, Rune Tap. As the initial damage, that's a lot of what you're going to take. After that, you're able to kite no problem, but you want to make sure they're grouped and in your DPS's AoE as much as possible there. And we did get knocked, which isn't ideal, but it actually worked out. We got knocked so we can kite way better. That was very lucky, but ideally you shouldn't get hit by any of the ground effects. Unless, I mean, if you want to time it like that so that it happens, then you can be pro like that. But that was just lucky on my part. But here, we're just going to finish off the inspired mobs. And then we're going to move on to the next packs here. Just 2 mobs to get, so it's not too bad at all. The next packs, it is going to be the Reaver. We're going to try to get a trap on that inspired Reaver. It can be a bit more difficult because the Reavers are pretty close to each other. It can be difficult to trap the inspired one if you don't have another form of hard CC. That's what we're going to try here. And just making sure if we do get a trap, we're hugging the left side there. And we do get this Pride first here, actually. And after that, we'll be able to do the Reaver trap and move on. Again, just really positioning around the first person who gets the beam, and then small minor steps from there. Paladin activated that Aura Mastery there around 9 to 10 stacks. So I know that we're going to be okay for now. Try not to overlap your AMZ with your healer's big raid cooldown. Make sure you're kind of giving it a few seconds after that or doing it shortly after there. We do have the AMZ up now. About to hit 20 stacks. When it hits this high stacks, it definitely gets very deadly. It's a lot of damage going out. We see the mage did use Ice Block, which is great. Both hunters have Turtle up as well. Just doing everything they can to survive. Give the healer some time to catch up on the healing on them so they can take a few more ticks and DPS it down. And here we go. We do have a trap down for the Reavers there, which is great. And we're just going to move on to the next pack for now. We'll pull those Reavers, the non-inspired one likely during the pack and the inspired one after the pack is down. For this, there is an inspired mob after this pack. Since we have a Staghorn in this pack, we don't want to pull the inspiring mob with this. But if it wasn't inspiring, we could do both of these spine mob packs together, as they're not too bad, especially when you have the debuff there. And we're just going to move on. This one, we didn't have any Gorger here. We didn't have any interrupts that we have to worry about, so we are moving on. We don't have the interrupts, so since we don't have to, we are just going in. We're not going to trap the inspiring mob. We still have the Pride buff as well, which is great. I'm not too worried. I had defensives up, and we can probably just DPS it down. So that's why I wasn't worried about hard CCs at this point. And again, after every pull ends, I'm going to try to get as many stacks of Bone Shield as I can and as much runic power as I can get. Sometimes it's not very possible to do so, but you do what you can. And we are going to keep going. We're going to ignore those Reavers there, and we're just going to keep moving on. Again, it really depends on your percentage of what you get after the maze, of what these pulls kind of look like. But I did opt to just move on and forget the Reavers. The Reavers can do a lot of damage on Fortified as well, especially with the poison dot they have. And that depends on your composition too, if you're able to clear poisons or not. And from here, I don't have many defenses up, so I am kiting a bit, using that Death and Decay slow, because we are running Grip of the Dead talent, and that's a great one to use, for sure. And I'm just kiting them towards where we're about to go here, and moving out of the Stormings whenever I can. And again, once my Death and Decays are up, I am using that slow, since I want to save my defensives for the next pull, and I'm able to slow them, so might as well. Last pack's almost done here. We are going to get, do need a little bit more percentage, so we're going to move on. We probably should have killed the Reaver pack there. I think that would have been a bit better here, but we're moving on to the next pack. It's not too bad, as long as we kill these all together. Not bad at all. We're just going to go in. We're going to focus the inspired larva. As you can see, we do have a staghorn, so we want to focus the inspired mob right away, but it's not an elite inspired mob. It'll go down quick, so I was pretty confident we can do that before we need to interrupt the staghorn there, and we did it pretty easily. From here, we have a few packs up while the pride is up. These packs aren't too bad. I mean, it's mainly going to be tank damage that's happening. As long as you have some defensives up and you're using your runic power efficiently, it won't be bad at all. But it can be a point of panicking if this happens. Just make sure you're really calling out who has the beams on them, just so no one gets hit, as if you do get hit by these, it can be very detrimental. And from here, again, try not to move them as much as I can to keep them in my DPS's AoE. But we did have lava storming there, and it was kind of messing with the healer a bit, so we did end up moving them there. Did pop the AMZ here, and after this, we're just going to move on to the bosses. That's the last fight here. I'm not sure if you can hear my dog in the background, but it's kind of whining a little bit there, trying to get to the partners. And here we go, going in to the last boss. And this boss, I designate with my team that I'm going to get all the consumption interrupts, and they can focus on the parasite interrupts here. We just want to really dodge those green swirlies on the ground, and make sure that none of the parasitic infestors get out. Again, I do designate that to my DPS usually. Here, I went for it, and I'm just calling out for Eslol, the other hunter there, to get the consumption interrupt. For mind links, make sure you're moving away. You definitely want to help out as much as possible. Even if you're getting out of range of your healer a little bit, it's worth doing, as the mind links do a ton of damage, especially if you're playing this on Tyrannical here. We do have larvas going out there. They just died, but make sure that you're using your Death and Decay on them if you're running Grip of the Dead, as that can help you group out a lot. If you can grip them in your D&D and hit them with that D&D slow, that definitely helps a ton. And we did get that consumption interrupt there. Boss is at 35%, almost down there. And pretty soon, we're just going to be focusing on the parasitic infestor interrupts, as consumption won't be happening anymore here. So from here, we can just feel free to get those interrupts there. Again, Mind Link, moving away as much as possible. We have quite a bit of defensives up. We have like full runic power, lots of bone shield stacks, so we're in a really good position here. Just using our cooldowns whenever we need to here. Getting towards the end of the fight, so might as well use some here. Some ads are down. And if you're running melee DPS, make sure you're kiting the boss out of the AoE on the ground. We don't have any melee DPS, we only have myself and the healer, so it wasn't as big of a deal, but definitely if you have two or more melee DPS, you want to be kiting the boss outside of the AoE on the ground as much as possible. And that's the key there. It was a pretty smooth run overall. We did have a few deaths. As you can see, we made some mistakes along the way there, but it's all about learning from your mistakes and doing what you can. I mean, each key is half an hour plus long, so you're going to make a few mistakes. It's very difficult, it's not impossible to have a absolutely stellar perfect run, but you do what you can. Play as perfect as you can, and hopefully it works out in the end. But yeah, that's the key. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope this helped you in some way figure out your mists key on the route and where to use your defensives. I forgot to enable my action tracker, unfortunately. I do have one from details, but unfortunately I forgot to enable it for this video. I'll definitely try to do this in subsequent videos, especially for these Mythic Plus dungeon runs. But thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate all the support, and I'll see you in the next one.